A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. Hopefully you had a great Independence Day holiday. Glad to be back with you. It was good to have a couple of days off. And Miss E is feeling okay. I'm glad I took yesterday off because, I don't know what they give cancer patients who are getting chemo, but they need to start giving Joe Biden this stuff. They gave her some sort of vitamin B12 shot, along with some anti-nausea drugs on Friday when she got her chemo and immunotherapy cocktail. She felt great on Saturday. We were able to get up, we went to the farmer's market, ran some errands. She felt okay on Sunday, and then by Monday, she felt like she'd just been hit with the train, so she didn't get out of bed. She is feeling a little bit better today, thankfully, but I'm just thinking if they can give cancer patients drugs that can make them feel okay for at least a couple of days, maybe Joe Biden needs that IV drip on a constant basis going forward here, just to give him a little pep, a little vigor. I know we're not supposed to be talking about Joe Biden anymore, right? He says, we're done talking about this debate. Yeah, I think maybe he's the one done talking about the debate. I don't think Democrats are done talking about it, but we have a different topic on today's show. We're not going to be talking about Joe Biden. We're going to be talking about what happened in Spokane, Washington, just a short time ago, where new gun control measures were introduced. Before we get to that, though, let's talk about this for a second. Economists warn that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and 401k account as the stock market braces for impact. With inflation on the rise and global uncertainty looming, it's clear why central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. If you have not had your eye on gold, time to make it a priority. Priority Gold. Trust their team of proven professionals to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver. Call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit prioritygold.com/golden for a free gold info guide. Plus, see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree that physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings, no matter the economic environment. So act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market's golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist or visit prioritygold.com/golden to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD. All right. So in Spokane, Washington, recently Washington State passed, they passed in the last session and went into law, I think, on July the 1st. Bans on the open carrying of firearms in more places. So it's not a true gun-free zone, right? Because they're not going after concealed carry. They're going after open carry, which I don't know how common that is in Washington State. It's not particularly common in Virginia, where I live, even though, again, Virginia is one of the majority of states around the country where you can open carry without the need for a permit or a license. Maybe it's become more popular in Washington State. Maybe it doesn't mean that there's a real reason to go after open carry. It certainly doesn't seem like there's been a problem. But this is, I think, more political theater than anything else in the Spokane, where, again, the city council has approved local gun control measures, expanding on that state law that prohibits the open carrying of firearms in places like public transit facilities, aquariums, zoos, and things of that nature. So the Spokane City Council enacted this new gun control law on Monday, restricting open carry in public facilities, and basically making it illegal to discharge a firearm anywhere in the city unless you are discharging your firearm in self-defense. They also specifically said that firearms that are seized by police should be destroyed rather than auctioned off, right? Because, again, then those guns might go back into circulation. Oh, no. I'm not really sure what the issue would be unless you just don't want anybody to be able to purchase a firearm, because folks can still go down to the local gun store. Again, political theater, in my opinion, not anything of real substance. The measures were approved on a 5-2 vote. There were only a couple of city council members, Jonathan Bingle and Michael Cathert, who voted against the measure. Cathert, interestingly enough, he praised the passion of the sponsor for wanting to reduce gun violence. But he also argued that local government's attention would be better suited to look at the criminal justice system and the jail capacity pointed to the case of an 18-year-old who was released from custody before trial after being accused of shooting a man outside of a 7-Eleven back in February. And then once he was out, he allegedly assaulted an elderly man in May. Catherick said, if we want to truly get a handle on this, there's a lot of things that we can do. But I think primarily it's in the hands of the justice system. And he's absolutely right about that. I mean, again, if somebody is intent on committing a violent crime, are they going to care that there's a sign up that says, well, you can't open carry here? No. Are they going to care that the Spokane Police Department has been instructed to destroy all seized firearms rather than allow them to be auctioned off or have parts even auctioned off? No, they don't care about that, right? These measures do nothing to impact violent criminals. I'd say they honestly do very little to impact lawful gun owners, but that's certainly the intent, right? They're targeting lawful gun owners with these new misdemeanor ordinances. They're certainly not aiming at violent criminals. And Catherick's spot on when he says, look, you can pass all these ordinances, but what's happening here? What's really leading and driving violent crime? In Spokane, like with every other city across the country, you've got a small group of core offenders who are responsible for a disproportionate amount of violent crime. And when you can focus on those core offenders, well, that's when you really start to see a dramatic reduction in violent crime. And again, this isn't rocket science. This is not cutting edge technology. This is at this point, a 25-year-old strategy, targeted deterrence. First put to use, well, I won't even say first put to use most famously, perhaps, in Boston in the 1990s. You've heard of the Massachusetts Miracle, where juvenile homicide rates dropped by more than 50%. It wasn't because of any new gun laws on the books. It was because of this strategy of, okay, who are the most violent gangs in Boston? Who are the most prolific offenders in those gangs? Well, let's start there. Right? Let's start with those most prolific offenders in the most violent gangs. They're already on probation. They're already on parole. They've been caught in the criminal justice system for years. Let's haul them in for a sit down. And we're going to have two groups that they're going to hear from. That first group is going to be law enforcement, right? It's going to be the chief of police. It's going to be the district attorney. It's going to be the U.S. attorney. Maybe we can get somebody from the FBI. Maybe we can get somebody from the ATF in there too. And then on the other side, we're going to have the community. Maybe a former teacher. Pastor in a local church, a counselor, and those folks, maybe even mom and dad. And those two disparate groups are going to have one singular message for these individuals who've been called in. You're going to stop shooting. We'll help you if you let us. We'll get you job training. We'll get you counseling, help you get your GED if you need it. We will help you turn your life around. We will help you find a future if you let us. But if you don't, we're still going to stop shooting. And it's going to be because you're in prison for a long time. Because you will not be getting any more plea deals. We will kick your cases up to federal court whenever possible because there are tougher sentences there. And you're not going to get time off for early behavior or for good behavior. You're not going to get a day of credit for every day you spend behind bars. You're going to serve the vast majority of your sentence because you're going to stop shooting one way or the other because we're sick of it. And again, juvenile homicides dropped by more than 50% in Boston. This ceasefire model has been adopted by dozens of cities and even some states. In Virginia right now, Jason Miyares, the Attorney General, is got Operation Ceasefire working in, I believe, 4 or 5 cities across the Commonwealth. And again, we're seeing good things. Because if you want to reduce crime, you have to go after the people who are committing crimes. If you want to reduce gun ownership, then you go after the people who legally own guns. And if you want to diminish a fundamental civil right, well, then you place more restrictions on that right, which is exactly what the city council in Spokane has done. So will we see a lawsuit? I wouldn't be surprised if we did, but honestly, I think the most likely subject of litigation in Washington State would be the state level law right, that says, hey, you can't open carry these places. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how successful a lawsuit would be. As I said, this is not a true gun-free zone. In fact, this new law in Washington doesn't establish any gun-free zones. It establishes open carry-free zones, right? But the Supreme Court has already kind of indicated in Bruin that, you can regulate. In fact, they've done more than, kind of said this. They've explicitly said, yes, you can regulate the carrying of firearms, right? Shall issue concealed carry is fine. There are some sensitive places that are okay. Now, maybe the argument should be, if it is not so sensitive that concealed carry should be banned, then why is it so sensitive that open carry should be banned? But I have a feeling that the Ninth Circuit, at the very least, and maybe the Supreme Court as well, would take the tact of, as long as some form of carrying is allowed, then restricting or regulating what type of carrying is allowed in these locations would be fine. So I think a legal challenge might actually face an uphill climb in Washington state. And again, I've kind of talked about this obliquely in the past, but in light of this last Supreme Court term, I know we got a good decision in Garland versus Cargill. I know that the Rahimi decision could have been a heck of a lot worse. As Chuck Michel told us, the wrap-up conference could have been worse as well, right? We could have seen a lot of these cases just dismissed outright instead of GVR'd. And I get that. I do. But let's be honest here. There are not 5 votes on the Supreme Court right now to wipe off every gun control law on the books. There just aren't. So I hope that the Supreme Court will continue to be a backstop for egregious abuses of our right to keep and bear arms, but I don't think that we can put all of our Second Amendment eggs in that judicial basket. We cannot ignore state legislatures. We cannot ignore Congress. We cannot ignore the political process by saying, well, we can just overturn these laws in the courts. There is still a need to prevent bad bills from becoming bad laws. And that means that we have to continue to engage and fight in states like Washington, where we're fighting an uphill battle, in California, New York, Massachusetts, and elsewhere. We cannot cede the field of politics and hope that, our rights will be secure based solely on the courts. That's not going to cut it. And so in Washington state, I know that gun owners, you feel beleaguered? You feel outnumbered? You feel like the legislature doesn't listen to you? And in many cases, you're right. So what's the answer? To get engaged, to get involved, to get out and vote this November, when I suspect that turnout is going to be a big issue for both parties. The party that turns out the most voters is going to have a chance to shape the direction of Washington state or Washington, D.C. or the United States of America over the next 4 years. And even though Democrats have a sizable majority in Washington state, I think that gun owners can still send a message. And not just, again, in state legislative elections or not even federal elections. I'm not sure when the Spokane City Council is up for election, but with this 5-2 vote, there are probably 5 gun owners in Spokane, Washington, who'd be pretty good representatives on the city council, right? I hope we see some challengers emerge here to the city council majority that decided to implement these new restrictions on lawful gun owners instead of cracking down on violent criminals. All right, before we get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report, we should talk about this. At the very heart of our democracy lies the principle that we hold sacred, free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish. Yet in today's digital age, discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are being silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, leaving many folks feeling voiceless in conversations that are crucial to their financial independence and security. And that's where Wealth Protection Research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech, committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Now, they tirelessly seek out financial experts, the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. And Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report. This free report highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't touch, and listeners can get it completely free by texting the word IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, then act now. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment doesn't think you can handle, and to take control of your financial destiny. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy. All right, turning now to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We will start there with a case out of Arizona. Here's the headline. After teens get probation in deadly tragedy, family and prosecution speak out. Now, this wasn't just a deadly tragedy. This was, in fact, a criminal act. In fact, a couple of criminal acts. Last July, 17-year-old Isaac Benitez was killed after being dragged by a car in Flowing Wells, Arizona. According to prosecutors, there was apparently a gun deal going on. The 17-year-old Benitez was allegedly selling a firearm to a guy named Anthony Duran, excuse me. Duran had a friend with him, Antonio Castro. And apparently, when Benitez handed the gun over to Duran in the passenger seat, Castro then sped away in the car. Benitez held on to the car and eventually was dragged to death. So Castro and Duran, both criminally charged and both allowed to take a plea deal in this case. Castro and Duran pleaded guilty to a reduced charge, a negligent homicide for Antonio Castro, manslaughter for Anthony Duran. And then a judge gave the 2 probation. Deputy Pima County Attorney Chris Ward, who was the prosecutor of the case, says that the family of the victim, quote, certainly have every right to maintain that justice has not been served. They have suffered a tremendous loss. And he said that he argued for prison time at the sentencing, but the judge decided against it. Ward says that the prosecution did need to offer, quote, probation available pleas. In other words, they needed to be able to offer a plea that would allow for the possibility of probation in order to get these individuals to accept the guilty plea to the reduced charges. He said, we were afraid at a jury trial, one or both defendants would be found not guilty. Our belief was that one or more jurors could have come to the conclusion that this was kind of along the lines of an accident instead of an intentional or dangerous reckless conduct. Now, here's the thing. Any jury could come back and say, no, there's not enough evidence to convict. Or, hey, you know what? We're divided, right? Some of us think that this individual should be convicted. Some of us think this individual should be acquitted. That's a possibility with every case that goes to trial. And I understand that prosecutors don't like that uncertainty. They want to be able to tout their 97% conviction rate. And when you take a case to trial, you might not get a 97% conviction rate. But if you offer a plea deal, somebody pleads guilty, guess what? You get to tout your conviction rate going up. But was justice served here? That's the question. I understand the motivation of prosecutors. But was justice served here? And again, it's not just a question of the prosecutor. It is also, in fact, a question for the judge. Why probation instead of prison time when a 17-year-old was killed? Now, you can argue, well, the 17-year-old was in the midst of committed a criminal act as well. He was selling a gun. He was not old enough to possess. People who may not have been eligible to possess them. But that doesn't change the criminal acts of Duran or Castro. Even if their victim, Isaac Benitez, was also committed a crime at the time, that does not absolve them of any of the criminal activity that they engaged in. So I do feel for the family here. And I think that they are right to question whether this particular deal should have been offered in the first place. Now, I will say that the family of Isaac Benitez has also apparently gotten involved in the DA race there in Pima County. There is a challenge to Laura Conover, the sitting district attorney, and the family has come out and endorsed Conover's opponent. On Monday, the district attorney responded saying the loss of a child is heartbreaking. It defies the natural life order, and I am grateful to our victim advocates who are so helpful to victims processing pain. But in recent days, and again this morning, we have seen victim grief exploited for political gain in campaign ads and speeches. This is appalling and beneath the dignity of this office, which I think is the wrong thing to say if you're Laura Conover and you're running for re-election. I feel for this family. I feel for the grief, but my God, that grief should not be exploited in campaign ads. I mean, if Conover really does feel that way, then I hope that she'll chide the gun control lobby for continually relying on the voices of victims to push the case for more gun restrictions, including right there in Arizona. But I don't think she will. And I don't even know if Laura Conover is a Democrat or a Republican. Don't know. Don't really care. It's not really germane to this. If you do have a family who is grieving, who has seen their son's killers walk away with probation, yeah, they have every right to be pissed. And they have every right to blame the district attorney for what happened. Now, again, the judge was involved as well. Prosecutor asked for prison time. But I do think it is fair for the Benitez family to say, hey, you know what? We think things might have gone a little bit differently with a different DA in charge. Now, I don't know that that's the case. They may be very disappointed if Conover is ousted and her replacement is elected. It could be a case of meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But I understand their frustration and I understand their anger. I think the DA should as well. All right, on to today's armed citizen story, also from Arizona, where the mayor of Bullhead City says he had to draw his firearm. Thankfully, did not have to fire shots, but he did have to hold a trespasser at gunpoint outside of his home until police arrived. Steve D'Amico, who's the mayor there in Bullhead City, said it was about 4:45 last Wednesday. He heard somebody rattling the doorknob of his front door. He said, the next thing you know, I hear banging on the door. And at that point, I went and I thought, is my son playing a joke on me? So he went looking for his son, found his son asleep inside the house. And that's when the mayor said, nope, okay, I'm going to grab my gun. He says, I was locked and loaded. He says, unfortunately, I was in my underwear. He said, you don't have time to put on clothes when something like that happens, which is, my wife and I have had this very same conversation about, why do you sleep in sleep pants? Why do you sleep in a sleep shirt? What happens if you have to get up and run outside in the middle of the night? Okay, fair enough. Steve D'Amico proves that point. D'Amico said he walked out his front door. One of his dogs then ran towards the intruder, but then went back inside when his wife called out for the pup. D'Amico said that's when he saw the trespasser had gotten past his locked gate. He was actually walking towards him. D'Amico said, I didn't know if he had a weapon or anything, so I held him at gunpoint, told him to get down on the ground, stay on the ground, not move. And I held him there until the police department came. Police did identify the individual, 34-year-old Ezekiel Felix Castillon of Mesa, Arizona. Mayor said that Castillon only spoke Spanish, which added to a language barrier. D'Amico said he believed that the intruder might have been under the influence of drugs, but doesn't know for sure. D'Amico said, some people second-guess me and say that I should have stayed in my home and called the police. He said, but I think I did the right thing. Not only that, had I not caught him, he probably would have moved on to another home. And there's no telling what could have happened. It said, in fact, Castellon's shoes were found in his neighbor's yard, and says that's where he thinks he hopped the fence. He also learned from another neighbor that Castellon was allegedly seen banging on the door of a nearby church. Mayor says he doesn't think he was targeted in particular. Castellon, according to police, said he didn't even know who lived at that home. But D'Amico said, look, cameras are big. And he said, and I should have had them. So my wife jumped all over me. Should have had that done because that would have alerted me right away, too, before he even got to my door. So he says now he will have batteries in his outside cameras, as he's added extra security measures to his home. But I don't think that Mayor Steve D'Amico in Bullhead City, Arizona, is going to be getting rid of his firearms anytime soon because, again, thankfully, he was able to help police take this individual in custody because he had a firearm, because he was able to protect himself. And like the vast majority of defensive gun uses in this country, didn't need to pull the trigger, but the presence of that firearm was enough to prevent whatever situation was developing from going any further. All right, finally today, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Not in Arizona. I'm sure there were some good Samaritans there over the weekend as well. But nope, this time in Massachusetts, where a man nearly drowned on Cape Cod over the Independence Day weekend. It was Friday at Dowses Beach in Osterville, Massachusetts. There was a 911 call that alerted police and firefighters to a near drowning. Apparently, there's a 46-year-old guy. He's out there in the water. He is unaware there's a really steep drop-off. And all of a sudden, whoop, he goes under. He's really struggling to get back to the surface. There's a really strong current there. So he's yelling for help. According to eyewitnesses, a 33-year-old woman, Frances Lonergan of Longmeadow, Massachusetts, then ran into the water, quote, without hesitation. She was at the beach with her family, including her newborn baby. But when she heard help coming from the water, she jumped in. Police said another good Samaritan saw Lonergan's selfless act of courage and also jumped into the water to help. The man was conscious and alert when he was pulled from the water, taken to a Cape Cod hospital by ambulance for additional evaluation. Local police say that Lonergan's, quote, heroic actions undoubtedly saved the swimmer's life. Barnstable police said in a statement, "We are extremely grateful for the bystanders with their own safety at risk to save the life of a complete stranger. Your actions exemplify true bravery and compassion. Job well done." Well, Frances Lonergan and the other anonymous Good Samaritan who came to the aid of that individual in trouble there, we thank you for your very, very good deed. All right, that is all the time we've got for you here on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I look forward to seeing you back here again tomorrow. I do want to remind you, Wednesdays, Hot Air's Ed Morrissey and I do our weekly VIP Gold live chat. I'd love for you to be a part of that. All you have to do is become a VIP Gold member, and the easiest way to do that is to go to bearingarms.com/subscribe. Use the promo code SAVEAMERICA, and you can get a significant savings on your VIP Gold membership or your VIP membership as well, if you'd rather go that route. You'll get an ad-free experience. You'll get exclusive content, including the VIP Gold live chats that we host every Wednesday. But you'll also be supporting the independent pro-segment journalism that we're doing at bearingarms.com. And that is extremely important these days. With big tech censorship, rampant anti-gun media bias, we need a place where we can get a perspective that is not all about taking the guns away and stripping Americans of their Second Amendment rights. And Bearing Arms is one of those places. So thank you again for your support. I really do appreciate it. Thank you as well for all of your thoughts and prayers for Miss E. Those are greatly appreciated as well. Try to stay cool today. I will see you back here tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.